Do you know that strange feeling of living on autopilot? Waking up, checking off obligations, smiling when expected, but deep down feeling like something's been left behind. Maybe it's not sadness, maybe it's not laziness, maybe it's just one unanswered question. When did I stop truly moving? We keep postponing the change, the conversation, the project. We believe the perfect moment will come, a clear sign, a definite certainty, but time doesn't wait. And slowly, without making a sound, it just keeps going. By the time we realize, so much has been left behind, including ourselves. Passivity doesn't show up all at once. It sneaks in through the small choices we don't make, the dreams we put off, the desires we swallow in the name of comfort, fear, or the simple habit of waiting. Today, we're going to talk about that gently, truthfully, no magic formulas. Just an honest look at what we feel but often avoid facing. Because sometimes, all we need to start moving again is to realize we've been still for far too long. Passivity doesn't arrive like an enemy. It doesn't knock, it doesn't scream, it doesn't threaten. On the contrary, it shows up looking friendly. Prudence, maturity, patience. How many times have you told yourself, it's not the right time yet, I need to think it through, I'll wait a bit longer? But there's a thin line between being careful and endlessly postponing, between reflecting and avoiding. And it's on that nearly invisible line where passivity likes to live, because it wears a good disguise. It wraps itself in logic, common sense, even emotional intelligence. But really, it's fear. Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of getting hurt again. The problem is, the more we delay, the harder it gets to start. Inertia gets heavier with time, and the habit of waiting becomes a way of life, a quiet, resigned way of life where the days go by, and we don't really live them, we just survive them. Passivity convinces you you're being wise, when really you're being paralyzed. It doesn't want you to fail, it just doesn't want you to try. Because trying is risky, because trying might change everything. And that's exactly why it needs to be unmasked. Because as long as it keeps whispering, now's not the time, maybe the time will never come. Passivity doesn't settle in all at once. It grows from tiny not todays, from interrupted efforts, from promises you made to yourself that slowly faded away, from one "I'll do it later" that became a routine. Over time, this habit of waiting becomes a kind of anesthesia. You still feel discomfort, just not enough to act. You know something needs to change, but always find a reason to delay. And then comes a dangerous, subtle cycle. The more you avoid action, the more disconnected you feel from your own ability to act. It's as if every still day silently reinforces you're not capable. And this belief, fed day after day, gets stronger until you really start to believe you're not capable, not energetic, not talented, not enough. And that's what hurts the most. It's not the world telling you you can't. It's you. Psychology calls this learned helplessness. When someone tries and sees no result, they start to believe trying is pointless. Even when a new opportunity arises, they feel no excitement. Because deep inside, something already gave up before even starting. But the cruelest part, this cycle doesn't scream, it whispers, it hides behind tiredness, logic, maturity. And when you realize it, years have passed. Years waiting for the right time to live, but that time doesn't exist. What exists is the present, and maybe everything begins when you finally refuse to keep repeating the silent pattern and choose, even afraid to take the first step, we learn early on that control is power, that planning is smart, that people who wait for the right moment make better decisions. But there's a point when planning becomes a prison, when the search for security turns into stagnation. How many times have you postponed something waiting for the ideal time? That calm phase when everything would be aligned, your mind clear, your heart ready, your courage intact, and that moment never came. Because it doesn't exist, because life never comes with guarantees. It is movement, it is risk, it is imperfection. And those who wait for the perfect scenario end up not living, just preparing for a life that never begins. That's one of passivity's greatest traps. It convinces you it's prudence when it's really fear in disguise. Fear of not controlling the outcome, fear of the unknown, fear of leaving the familiar. Michel de Montaigne once said that most of our suffering comes from things that never happened. And he was right, because while we wait for the right time, we build imaginary scenarios that only serve to justify our paralysis. But the truth is simple and hard. There is no right time. There is only the present. And it almost always comes with doubt, with fear, with uncertainty. And even so, it's the only place where life actually happens. The comfort zone has a pretty name, but hides an uncomfortable truth. It's often a cage with cushions. We get used to what we know, even if it's not good. We get used to the job that doesn't inspire, the relationship that doesn't lift us up, the routine that doesn't light us up. Why? Because change is painful. Because leaving what's predictable, even if it's empty, is deeply uncomfortable. And the brain, wired to protect us, will always choose the safest path, even if that means living a smaller life. Comfort is sneaky. It doesn't hurt too much, but it never lets you truly grow. It doesn't scream like raw suffering, but it whispers, "Stay here. At least you know what to expect." And life, which is meant to move, slowly starts to wither in silence. Passivity feeds off this illusion of safety. But what seems like protection is often just escape. Escape from responsibility, from frustration, from failure. But to flee from those is also to flee from the chance to live something real, intense, truly yours. Maybe the greatest risk isn't in leaving your comfort zone. Maybe the real danger is staying in it for too long. And one day, realizing you've become a spectator in your own life. Life doesn't charge an entry fee, but it does demand presence. And when you live passively, you're not avoiding pain, you're postponing meaning. Trading intensity for routine, purpose for busyness, soul for silence. Viktor Frankl once said that the deepest human drive isn't pleasure or power, it's meaning. And maybe that's why passivity hurts so much, even when it looks comfortable, because it robs you of exactly that, the sense that you're living for something, towards something, with something alive inside you. How many times have you felt empty even when everything around you looked fine? How often have you asked yourself, is this really all there is in the middle of a functional but soulless life? Passivity doesn't shout, but it drains. It slowly sucks out the vital force that moves us. And before you know it, you don't feel excitement for what once inspired you. You don't feel drive, or that good kind of urgency, or the spark in your eyes. The cost of not truly living doesn't show up on your bank statement. It shows up on your pillow, in the quiet moments between tasks, deep in your chest when no one's looking. And that silent, almost invisible cost is what corrodes the most, because it's a kind of pain that has no words, but also doesn't go away. It only begins to fade when you decide to move again, even slowly, even afraid, even without all the answers. Because at the end of the day, that's what living really is, making meaning happen one step at a time. There comes a moment when you can't blame time, luck, or others anymore. When the only way out is to look in the mirror and admit, if something's going to change, I'm the one who has to start it. It's hard, but it's liberating. Because as long as we believe life depends on what's outside of us, we stay at the mercy of it. Radical responsibility isn't about blame, it's about choice, about realizing that even when everything feels out of control, there's always something that depends on us. How we react. The decision to continue the next step, no matter how small. And that's when passivity starts to lose its grip. When you stop waiting for magical motivation, external approval, or total certainty. When you understand that taking action is an act of courage, not from full confidence, but from the desire to find yourself again. Taking responsibility for your life is an act of emotional maturity. It's stepping out of the victim role and into the author role. And no, it won't make everything easy, but it will make you feel, for the first time in a long time, like you're finally back in charge of your own story. Real change begins when you understand. Life isn't something that happens to us. It's something we build, one step at a time, one choice at a time, even afraid, even without guarantees, even without applause, but with truth, with presence, with direction. Many people wait for big moments to change, but new beginnings rarely come with fireworks. Most of the time, they start in silence, in tiny decisions, in almost invisible actions, but filled with intention. You don't need to turn your life upside down overnight. You don't need a perfect plan. What you need is to begin. One step, one choice, one small break in your usual routine. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. The idea that small improvements done consistently lead to big transformation. 1% a day, one gesture at a time. Because change isn't built by intensity, it's built by consistency. Passivity wants you to believe it's only worth acting if you're going to do something big. But the truth is the opposite. The smaller the step, the more possible it becomes, and that's what unlocks the path. Maybe your first step is waking up earlier tomorrow, or sending that message you've been avoiding, or going for a walk, or saying no where you always said yes. What matters isn't the size of the gesture, it's the meaning it carries. Every time you act, even with fear, you're reminding yourself, I'm still here, and I'm ready to move again. And that might just be the bravest thing you ever do. In the end, life isn't about grand decisions. It's about a collection of small acts of presence, about waking up and even with fear, saying, today I begin. Passivity is quiet, but so is action. It doesn't have to be loud to be real. It doesn't have to be huge to transform. It just has to be sincere and consistent. Maybe what you're looking for, purpose, movement, lightness, isn't far ahead in some unreachable place. Maybe it's right here, in your next step, in this moment, in something simple you can do today. If this video spoke to you, if it sparked something inside, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, what will your first small step be? It might seem like a little thing, but it could be the beginning of everything, like subscribe and watch the video we've suggested right here, because if you've made it this far, it's because something in you has already started to move. And sometimes that's all life needs.